For those who desire to come into relationship with our Father in heaven, Yahuwah, it requires some cleansing and removing doctrines of filth from our influence. After someone accepts the gospel, the good news, it is important to fully understand the covenant that we are under since the church age began, or better known as the time of the Gentiles. I bring that up because since the times of the Gentiles happened, there has been a lot of false doctrines that Gentiles came in and spread when the Hebrews were being scattered around the world. And one of these major false doctrines the foreigners created was the misapplication of what the new covenant actually is. This is a topic that goes along with the replacement theology that they came up with as well. One thing people cannot ignore is that the Bible is a book about the Hebrews, and these people were the chosen nation that Yahuwah personally dealt with and established a covenant with. But even though they broke the covenant, Yahuwah still made the second covenant with them. What has happened though is that Gentiles came in and hijacked the covenant and got rid of the influence of the Hebrews and introduced a lawless new covenant to the world. And this lawless new covenant is what the majority of Christians subscribe to and believe. And so it is important that we remove the filth from pagans and come to Yah in purity and in truth. What people must recognize is that lawlessness has been brought into the body of Christ. What is sin? Everyone who practices sin also practices lawlessness, and sin is lawlessness, ignoring God's law by action or neglect or by tolerating wrongdoing, being unrestrained by his commands and his will. 1 John chapter 3 verse 4. So you can see from this that the Apostle John wrote that sin is lawlessness. That is what sin is. And when you look at the law, mainly the 10 Commandments, all men have broke this law. That's what John means when he says lawlessness. But this is how we know what sin is, to have the knowledge of it. But in order for us to not live in sin, we need to adhere to the law, the Torah. This is how we live in righteousness and be in right standing with Yahuwah. From people rejecting the Torah and living lawlessly is how the world is so evil today, and no one is walking in true love. And because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. Matthew chapter 24 verse 12. This is what Messiah prophesied about the last days. Yahusha also prophesied, "Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness." Matthew chapter 7 verse 21 to 23. So what was the accusation that he gave when he said that he would tell us to depart? He said, you who practice lawlessness. And to be lawless is to be in a state of disorder due to disregarding the law. So you must understand that we cannot reject his law and live however we want to. People that do this are Satanists who are practicing do what thou wilt. And they will be the same ones who will accept the lawless one, who we know as the Antichrist when he comes. Let no one deceive you by any means, for that day will not come unless the falling away comes first, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way. And then the lawless one will be revealed, whom Yahuwah will consume with the breath of his mouth and destroy with the brightness of his coming. The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this reason, God will send them strong delusion, that they should believe the lie, that they all may be condemned who did not believe the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 3 and 7 to 12. These people who are rejecting Yah's Torah and are choosing to be lawless have accepted a different gospel that Paul warned of. So people have to be careful of this and review where their doctrines and theologies come from. Many people reject the laws and commands because they feel the new covenant provided this change. One statement people say is, if we were able to perfectly keep the statutes, laws, and commands, we wouldn't have a need for a savior because we would be able to perfectly do it all ourselves. But we can't do it, so this is why we need a savior. People say things like this all of the time. They are basically saying that we needed a savior to not have us keep the Torah. There's this belief that our Father's ways are too hard, so he basically changed this covenant to make it easier for us, and that's why we have our Messiah. But this is the furthest thing from the truth. That is the major doctrine of Christianity that many people follow and wholeheartedly believe. People need to understand the fullness of the renewed covenant and our Messiah. Ancient Israel did not understand him when he came, and many people in these modern times do not understand him either because of falsehoods that have been taught by Christianity. Everyone needs to understand Messiah Yahusha, our King. One thing people must be aware of is that there's an actual influence in this world that is desperately against you keeping the commandments in the Torah. Satan is the one that will talk to you and discourage you from keeping the commands and keeping the Torah. He is the one that would tell you things like, Father's ways are just too hard to keep, so he had to change it for us. If you really listen to those kind of words, they sound exactly like the serpent in the garden. That mindset is from Satan, and you should never look at our Father's Torah in this way. King David was one of the many examples in the Old Testament of a man who followed the Torah and truly had a heart for the Father. But now your kingdom shall not endure. Yahuwah has sought out for himself a man, David, after his own heart, and Yahuwah has appointed him as leader and ruler over his people, because you have not obeyed what Yahuwah commanded you. 1 Samuel chapter 13, verse 14. And this is a great example that we believers should strive to be like. We should want to be known like that by the Father as a man or woman after his own heart. King David was not a lawless man. So when people say you cannot keep the Torah, that is not true. David loved Yah and he loved his Torah. So to say that we cannot keep the Torah and that it is a curse is to contradict Scripture. Israel was blessed when they actually kept the Torah. For those who are against his Torah, how is it that this man, David, that was the king of Israel, who was described as a man after God's own heart, a man who our Messiah descends from, why is it that he loves the Torah and delights in it, but some of you believe that the Torah is something that is bondage and something that should not be kept? You reject those who are teaching the Torah. If you feel that Israel was not able to keep the Torah and therefore you must not follow it, it's because you have been falsely taught this and you have not truly learned this from a true biblical perspective. Do not keep any doctrine that tells you there is a problem with his Torah. There is no problem with his Torah. There is a problem with us and our hearts, and that's why Israel was chastised and punished. We must come to the Most High and serve him like David did. David wasn't perfect. He made mistakes and he paid for them, but he was still loved by Yah. And if we hold him as our example, which then this reflects back to our Messiah as son of David, we will know how to be. To use Christ as an excuse for lawlessness is completely and utterly wrong and dangerous. This is a mindset of Gentiles who claim to know him, but do not want to submit to him. The beginning steps of understanding the renewed covenant is you must review what was actually prophesied. Behold, the days are coming, says Yahuwah, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel, the northern kingdom, and with the house of Judah, the southern kingdom. Not like the covenant which I made with the fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, my covenant which they broke, although I was a husband to them, says Yahuwah. But this is the covenant which I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says Yahuwah. I will put my law within them, and I will write it on their hearts, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. And each man will no longer teach his neighbor and his brother, saying, Know Yahuwah, for they will all know me through personal experience, from the least of them to the greatest, says Yahuwah. For I will forgive their wickedness, and I will no longer remember their sin. Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 31 to 34. This right here is what was actually prophesied. This is the new covenant. But let's get something clear about these words, new covenant. In the verse when it says, Behold, the days are coming, says Yahuwah, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 31. The actual word used here is the Hebrew word chadash. The English word is new. In Hebrew, chadash means to be new, renew, repair. So with that understanding, the verse actually reads, Behold, the days come, says Yahuwah, that I will cut a renewed covenant with the house of Yasharel, Israel, and with the house of Yehudah, Judah. Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 31. When you actually understand the word that was actually used, and what it actually means, it brings over a whole new meaning. And side note, this is why the Bible translations like the Sefer is a great book to study from, because it gives the accurate words that were originally given. Because a lot of these modern translations change up a lot of words, which will change the overall meaning of what the passage was originally saying. But when you understand that the covenant was renewed, and it wasn't just new, it changes everything. When something is new, it sounds like it is completely different than it was before. But renew is something that is completely different. We renew our leases, contracts, and etc., and sometimes it has different terms. A new lease or contract, this can be something completely different, and that is precisely what we have been led to feel. But this covenant is not new, it is renewed. When you say new covenant, this brings confusion. It is a renewed covenant. That's why Yah said in the scriptures that even though Israel broke the first covenant, he was still making the second one with them, and that he was still providing them the law as he did in the first one. So this is not a completely different new covenant as people make it seem, but it is the same covenant as the first one, but Yah just repaired it and made it more better. So you must understand what the exact difference Yah made with the first old covenant and the renewed covenant. But in this video, we are covering what the actual old covenant is. The first covenant. We first must look at the first covenant that Yahuwah made with the children of Israel to build a proper foundation of our understanding of the renewed covenant. This is the covenant that Yahuwah made with Yasharel when he took them out of Egypt. In the 3rd month after the children of Israel had gone out of the land of Egypt, on the same day they came to the wilderness of Sinai, for they had departed from Rephidim, had come to the wilderness of Sinai, and camped in the wilderness. So Israel camped there before the mountain, and Moses went up to Elohim, and Yahuwah called to him from the mountain, saying, Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, You have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings, and brought you to myself. Now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be a special treasure to me above all people, for all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which you shall speak to the children of Israel. So Moses came and called for the elders of the people, and laid before them all these words which Yahuwah commanded him. Then all the people answered together and said, All that Yahuwah has spoken we will do. So Moses brought back the words of the people to Yahuwah, and Yahuwah said to Moses, Behold, I come to you in the thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with you and believe you forever. So Moses told the words of the people to Yahuwah. Then Yahuwah said to Moses, Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes, and let them be ready for the 3rd day. For on the 3rd day Yahuwah will come down upon Mount Sinai in the sight of all people. You shall set bounds for the people all around, saying, Take heed to yourselves that you do not go up to the mountain or touch its base. Whoever touches the mountain shall surely be put to death. Not a hand shall touch him, but he shall surely be stoned or shot with an arrow. Whether man or beast, he shall not live. When the trumpet sounds long, they shall come near the mountain. So Moses went down from the mountain to the people and sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes. And he said to the people, Be ready for the 3rd day. Do not come near your wives. Then it came to pass on the 3rd day in the morning that there were thunderings and lightnings and a thick cloud on the mountain. And the sound of the trumpet was very loud, so that all the people who were in the camp trembled. And Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet with Elohim, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. Now Mount Sinai was completely in smoke, because Yahuwah descended upon it in fire. Its smoke ascended like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain quaked greatly. And when the blast of the trumpet sounded long, it became louder and louder. Moses spoke, and Elohim answered him by voice. Then Yahuwah came down upon Mount Sinai on top of the mountain, and Yahuwah called Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. And Yahuwah said to Moses, Go down and warn the people, lest they break through to the gates at Yahuwah, and many of them perish. Also let the priests who come near Yahuwah consecrate themselves, lest Yahuwah break out against them. But Moses said to Yahuwah, The people cannot come out to Mount Sinai, for you warned us, saying, Set bounds around the mountain and consecrate it. Then Yahuwah said to him, Away, get down and then come up, you and Aaron with you. But do not let the priests and the people break through to come up to Yahuwah, lest he break out against them. So Moses went down to the people and spoke to them. Exodus chapter 19, verse 1 to 25. So right here, Yah told Moses to gather the people, and he was now making a covenant with them, that if they follow him, they will be blessed. And Elohim spoke all these words, saying, I am Yahuwah your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them nor serve them. For I, Yahuwah your Elohim, am a jealous El, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing mercy to thousands, to those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of Yahuwah your Elohim in vain, for Yahuwah will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of Yahuwah your Elohim. In it you shall not do no work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. For in 6 days Yahuwah made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore Yahuwah blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon the land which Yahuwah your Elohim is giving you. You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is your neighbor's. Now all the people witnessed the thunderings, the lightning flashes, the sound of the trumpet, and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they trembled and stood afar off. Then they said to Moses, You speak with us, and we will hear. But let not Elohim speak with us, lest we die. And Moses said to the people, Do not fear, for Elohim has come to test you, and that his fear may be before you, so that you may not sin. So the people stood afar off, but Moses drew near the thick darkness where Elohim was. Exodus chapter 20, verse 1 to 21. What we just read here is what we know as the Ten Commandments. Now he said to Moses, Come up to Yahuwah, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and worship from afar. And Moses alone shall come near Yahuwah, but they shall not come near, nor shall the people go up with him. So Moses came and told the people all the words of Yahuwah and all the judgments. And all the people answered with one voice and said, All the words which Yahuwah has said we will do. And Moses wrote all the words of Yahuwah, and he rose early in the morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain, and 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Israel. Then he sent young men of the children of Israel, who offered burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offerings of oxen to Yahuwah. And Moses took half the blood and put it in basins, and half the blood he sprinkled on the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant and read in the hearing of the people, and they said, All that Yahuwah has said we will do, and be obedient. And Moses took the blood, sprinkled it on the people, and said, This is the blood of the covenant which Yahuwah has made with you according to all these words. Then Moses went up, also Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and they saw Elohim of Israel. And there was under his feet as it were a paved work of sapphire stone, and it was like the very heavens in its clarity. But on the nobles of the children of Israel he did not lay his hand. So they saw Elohim, and they ate and drank. Then Yahuwah said to Moses, Come up to me on the mountain and be there, and I will give you tablets of stone, and the law and the commandments which I have written, that you may teach them. So Moses arose with his assistant Joshua, and Moses went up to the mountain of Elohim, and he said to the elders, Wait here for us until we come back to you. Indeed, Aaron and Hur are with you. If any man has a difficulty, let him go to them. Then Moses went up into the mountain, and a cloud covered the mountain. Now the glory of Yahuwah rested on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And on the seventh day he called to Moses out of the midst of the cloud. The sight of the glory of Yahuwah was like a consuming fire on top of the mountain in the eyes of the children of Israel. So Moses went into the midst of the mountain and went up into the mountain. And Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. Exodus chapter 24, verse 1 to 18. This right here is the first covenant that Yahuwah made with Yasharel. This is what he commanded of them. And to consecrate it, Moses took the blood of the oxen and sprinkled it on them. So Moses took the blood, which had been placed in the large basins, and sprinkled it on the people, and said, Behold, the blood of the covenant which Yahuwah has made with you in accordance with all these words. Exodus chapter 24, verse 8. This is how he sealed the covenant. In this first covenant, how did Yahuwah give them this covenant after he told them? He wrote them on tablets of stone, and this is how he gave them the covenant. Shortly after Israel broke this covenant, immediately it made a golden calf. And there was a problem so much that Moses broke the tablets. At that time, 3,000 people died on that same day. But it was important he remade the tablets and renewed the covenant. And Yahuwah said to Moses, cut 2 tablets of stone like the first ones, and I will write on these tablets the words that were on the first tablets which you broke. So be ready in the morning, and come up in the morning to Mount Sinai, and present yourself to me there on the top of the mountain. And no man shall come up with you, and let no man be seen throughout all the mountain. Let neither flocks nor herds feed before that mountain. So he cut 2 tablets of stone like the first ones. Then Moses rose early in the morning and went up to Mount Sinai, as Yahuwah had commanded him. And he took in his hand the 2 tablets of stone. Now Yahuwah descended in the cloud and stood with him there, and proclaimed the name of Yahuwah. And Yahuwah passed before him and proclaimed, Yahuwah, Yahuwah El, merciful and gracious, long-suffering, and abounding in goodness and truth, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, by no means clearing the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children and the children's children, to the 3rd and the 4th generation. So Moses made in haste and bowed his head toward the earth and worshipped. Then he said, if now I have found grace in your sight, O Adonai, let my Adonai, I pray, go among us, even though we are a stiff-necked people, and pardon our iniquity and our sin, and take us as your inheritance. And he said, behold, I make a covenant. Before all your people I will do marvels such as have not been done in all the earth, nor in any nation. And all the people among whom you are shall see the work of Yahuwah, for it is an awesome thing that I will do with you. Observe what I command you this day. Behold, I am driving out from before you the Amorite, and the Canaanite, and the Hittite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite. Take heed to yourself, lest you make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land where you are going, lest it be a snare in your midst. But you shall destroy their altars, break their sacred pillars, and cut down their wooden images. For you shall worship no other God, for Yahuwah, whose name is jealous, is a jealous El. Lest you make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land, and they play the harlot with their gods, and make sacrifice to their gods. And one of them invites you, and you eat of his sacrifice, and you take of his daughters for your sons, and his daughters play the harlot with their gods, and make your sons play the harlot with their gods. You shall make no molded gods for yourselves. The feast of unleavened bread you shall keep. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, as I commanded you, in the appointed time of the month of Abib. For in the month of Abib you came out from Egypt. All that open the womb are mine, and every male firstborn among your livestock, whether ox or sheep. But the firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem with a lamb. And if you will not redeem him, then you shall break his neck. All the firstborn of your sons you shall redeem, and none shall appear before me empty-handed. 6 days you shall work, but on the 7th day you shall rest. In plowing time and in harvest you shall rest. And you shall observe the feast of weeks, of the first fruits of wheat harvest, and the feast of ingathering at the year's end. 3 times in a year all your men shall appear before Yahuwah, the Elohai of Israel. For I will cast out the nations before you and enlarge your borders. Neither will any man covet your land when you go up to appear before Yahuwah your Elohim 3 times in the year. You shall not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leaven, nor shall the sacrifice of the feast of Passover be left until morning. The first of the first fruit of your land you shall bring to the house of Yahuwah your Elohim. You shall not boil a young goat in its mother's milk. Then Yahuwah said to Moses, write these words, for according to the tenure of these words I have made a covenant with you and with Israel. So he was there with Yahuwah 40 days and 40 nights. He neither ate bread nor drank water, and he wrote on the tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 commandments. Now it was so, when Moses came down from Mount Sinai, and the 2 tablets of the testimony were in Moses' hand when he came down from the mountain, that Moses did not know that the skin of his face shone while he talked with them. So when Aaron and all the children of Israel saw Moses, behold, the skin of his face shone, and they were afraid to come near him. And then Moses called to them, and Aaron and all the rulers of the congregation returned to him, and Moses talked with them. Afterward all the children of Israel came near, And he gave them as commandments all that Yahuwah spoken with him on Mount Sinai. And when Moses had finished speaking with them, he put a veil on his face. But whenever Moses went in before Yahuwah to speak with him, he would take the veil off until he came out. And he would come out and speak to the children of Israel whatever he had been commanded. And whenever the children of Israel saw the face of Moses, that the skin of Moses' face shone, then Moses would put the veil on his face again until he went in to speak with him. Exodus chapter 34, verse 1 to 35. All of this is just how the covenant was established. After this, they built the tabernacle and the sanctuary, and the Ark of the Covenant, which is where they placed the 2 stone tablets. They did all of that according to Yahuwah's design and standards. All of that was necessary for the priestly service of the Levites, including the altar for the burnt offerings. So the Israelites did all the work according to all that Yahuwah had commanded Moses, and Moses carefully inspected all the work, and behold, they had done it, just as Yahuwah had commanded, so they had done it. So Moses blessed them. Exodus chapter 39, verse 42 to 43. Then the cloud covered the tabernacle of meeting, and the glory of Yahuwah filled the tabernacle, and Moses was not able to enter the tabernacle of meeting, because the cloud rested above it, and the glory of Yahuwah filled the tabernacle. Whenever the cloud was taken up from above the tabernacle, the children of Israel would go onward in all their journeys. But if the cloud was not taken up, then they did not journey to the day that it was taken up. For the cloud of Yahuwah was above the tabernacle by day, and the fire was over it by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel, throughout all their journeys. Exodus chapter 40, verse 34 to 38. This is why we celebrate Sukkot. We celebrate when Yahuwah tabernacled and dwelt among his people. Hallelujah. This is very important. There were a lot of commandments and statutes that Yahuwah gave to Israel as his guidance for them, such as the 10 Commandments, the dietary laws, the festivals, sexual laws, and etc. All of these types of laws were for guidance. That's why people should look over the pie graph that shows what laws pertain to who. People who do not study the Old Covenant assume that there were all these 613 laws that everyone had to keep, but that is not the case. That is not how the Old Covenant worked. The 613 commandments is a tradition from the Khazars. These false Jews are the ones who passed down this Jewish tradition through history that has made people believe that there are 613 mitzvot or laws in the Torah that are written and need to be kept. This number sometimes is used by some to attempt to prove that we cannot keep all of the laws. All of this just comes from falsehoods that Christians flock to without understanding. Messiah did not keep all these so-called 613 laws. The laws given in the Torah are specified to whom they pertain. A large portion of the laws are for the priests, some just for men, some for women, some for animals or the owner of animals, etc. Approximately 29% of the laws are specifically for the priests. There are about 30% divided into percentages for the men, women, Kohen Akadal, judges, sovereigns, servants, and etc. And the remaining 41% actually apply to everyone who considers themselves part of Yasharel Israel, regardless of position or condition. The supposed 613 laws is a number the modern Jewish scribes arrived at when examining the list of laws. In the Bible, there is no single definitive list that lists out the 613 commandments. This numbering and giving of the 613 laws is not from Yahuwah, but it is from modern Judaism. And these are facts that people must understand if you want to truly understand what the first covenant was about. There were no 613 commandments that Israel had to individually keep, but mainly the 10 commandments. And while Israel's main focus was keeping the 10 commandments, they also had other laws they kept, like the feast days, sexual laws, marital laws, dietary laws, and etc. But all of these types of laws were for guidance, for a more healthier and purer life. There is nothing wrong with Yahuwah's guidance for us. As you build in your understanding of the Old Covenant, the biggest thing in this covenant that Israel were required to do were offerings. They had to do sin offerings, trespass offerings, guilt offerings, and many more. There were many works that the Israelites had to do when it came to animal sacrifices. And you will see that these are the main works that Paul was speaking against in his epistles, because many Israelites were going back to the old way they were brought under with the daily animal sacrifices. But all of the animal sacrifices they had to do to atone for sin can be found in the book of Leviticus. Yahuwah had different requirements depending on who sinned, depending on if it was the priest who sinned, the whole congregation of Israel, the ruler of the people, the common people, and etc. Yah had different requirements. The sin offering. If anyone of the common people sins unintentionally by doing any of the things Yahuwah has commanded not to be done and becomes guilty, if his sin which he has committed is made known to him, that he shall bring a goat, a female without blemish, as his offering for the sin which he has committed, he shall lay his hand on the head of the sin offering, transferring symbolically his guilt to the sacrifice, and kill it at the place of the burnt offering. The priest shall take some of its blood with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and shall pour out all the rest of its blood at the base of the altar. Then he shall remove all its fat, just as the fat was removed from the sacrifice of peace offerings, and the priest shall offer it up in smoke on the altar as a sweet and soothing aroma to Yahuwah. In this way the priest shall make atonement for him, and he will be forgiven. If he brings a lamb as his offering for his sin offering, he shall bring a female without blemish. He shall lay his hand on the head of the sin offering, transferring symbolically his guilt to the sacrifice, and kill it as a sin offering in the place where they killed the burnt offering. The priest is to take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar of the burnt offering, and all the rest of the blood of the lamb he shall pour out at the base of the altar. Then he shall remove all its fat, just as the fat of the lamb is removed from the sacrifice of the peace offerings, and the priest shall offer it up in smoke on the altar, on the offerings by fire to Yahuwah. In this way the priest shall make atonement for him in regard to the sin which he has committed, and he will be forgiven. Leviticus chapter 4 verse 27 to 35. The trespass offering. If anyone sins after he hears a public adjuration, solemn command to testify, when he is a witness, whether he has seen or otherwise known something, if he fails to report it, then he will bear his guilt and be held responsible. Or if someone touches any ceremonially unclean thing, whether the carcass of an unclean wild animal, or the carcass of an unclean domestic animal, or the carcass of unclean creeping things, even if he is unaware of it, he has become unclean, and he will be guilty. Or if he touches human uncleanness, whatever kind it may be, and he becomes unclean, but he is unaware of it, when he recognizes it, he will be guilty. Or if anyone swears an oath thoughtlessly or impulsively aloud that he will do either evil or good, in whatever manner or a person may speak thoughtlessly or impulsively with an oath, but he is unaware of it, when he recognizes it, he will be guilty in one of these. So it shall be when a person is guilty in one of these, that he shall confess the sin he has committed. He shall bring his guilt offering to Yahuwah for the sin which he has committed, a female from the flock, a lamb or a goat as a sin offering. So the priest shall make atonement on his behalf for his sin. But if he cannot afford a lamb, then he shall bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons as his guilt offering for his sin to Yahuwah, one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering. He shall bring them to the priest, who shall offer first the one for the sin offering, and shall nip its head at the front of his neck, but shall not sever it completely. He shall also sprinkle some of the blood of the sin offering on the side of the altar, and the rest of the blood shall be drained out at the base of the altar. It is a sin offering. The second bird he shall prepare as a burnt offering according to the ordinance. So the priest shall make atonement on his behalf for the sin which he has committed, and it will be forgiven him. But if he cannot afford to bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, then he shall bring as his offering for his sin the 10th part of an ephah of fine flour as a sin offering. He shall not put olive oil or incense on it, for it is a sin offering. He shall bring it to the priest, who shall take a handful of it as a memorial portion and offer it up in smoke on the altar with the offerings by fire to Yahuwah. It is a sin offering. In this way the priest shall make atonement for him for the sin which he has committed in one of these things, and it will be forgiven him. Then the rest shall be for the priest, like the grain offering. Leviticus chapter 5 verse 1 to 13. After all of this was explained and understood by the people, the priestly service of the Levites had begun doing the animal sacrifices and etc. The Levites. And it happened on the 8th day that Moses called Aaron and his sons and the elders of Israel, and he said to Aaron, "Take a bull calf as a sin offering, and a ram as a burnt offering, each without blemish, and offer both before Yahuwah, to say to the Israelites, take a male goat as a sin offering, and a calf and a lamb, both 1 year old without blemish, as a burnt offering, and a bull and a ram as peace offerings to sacrifice before Yahuwah, and a grain offering mixed with olive oil. For today Yahuwah will appear to you. So they took what Moses had commanded to the front of the tent of meeting, and all the congregation approached and stood before Yahuwah. Moses said, this is the thing which Yahuwah has commanded you to do, so that the glory of Yahuwah may appear to you. Moses said to Aaron, approach the altar and present your sin offering and your burnt offering, and make atonement for yourself and for the people, and present the offering of the people and make atonement for them, just as Yahuwah has commanded. So Aaron approached the altar and killed the calf as the sin offering, which was designated for himself. The sons of Aaron presented the blood to him. He dipped his finger in the blood and put some of it on the horns of the altar, and poured out the rest of the blood at the altar's base. But the fat, the kidneys, and the lobe of the liver from the sin offering he offered up in smoke on the altar, just as Yahuwah had commanded Moses. And Aaron burned the meat and the hide in the fire outside the camp. Then he killed the burnt offering, and Aaron's son handed the blood to him, and he sprinkled it around on the altar. They brought the burnt offering to him piece by piece with the head, and Aaron offered them up in smoke on the altar. He also washed the entrails and the legs, and offered them up in smoke with the burnt offering on the altar. Then Aaron presented the people's offering. He took the goat for the sin offering of the people, and killed it and offered it for sin, as he did the first. He also presented the burnt offering and offered it according to the ordinance. Next Aaron presented the grain offering, and took a handful of it and offered it up in smoke on the altar in addition to the burnt offering of the morning. He also killed the bull and the ram, the sacrifice of peace offerings, which was for the people. And Aaron's sons handed the blood to him, and he sprinkled it around on the altar. As for the portions of fat from the bull and from the ram, the fat tail, and the fat covering the internal organs and the kidneys, and the lobe of the liver, they now put the portions of fat on the breast, and Aaron offered the fat up in smoke on the altar. But the breast and the right thigh Aaron presented as a wave offering before Yahuwah, just as Moses had commanded. Then Aaron lifted his hands toward the people and blessed them, and came down from the altar of burnt offering, after presenting the sin offering, the burnt offering, and the peace offerings. Moses and Aaron went into the tent of meeting, and when they came out, they blessed the people. And the glory and brilliance of Yahuwah, the Shekinah cloud, appeared to all the people as promised. Then fire came out from before Yahuwah, and consumed the burnt offering, and the portions of the fat on the altar. And when all the people saw it, they shouted and fell face downward in awe and worship. Leviticus chapter 9, verse 1 to 24. Then Yahuwah spoke to Aaron, saying, do not drink wine or intoxicating drink, neither you nor your sons with you, when you come into the tent of meeting, so that you will not die. It is a permanent statute throughout your generations, and to make a distinction and recognize a difference between the holy, sacred, and the common, profane, and between the ceremony unclean and the clean. And you are to teach the Israelites all the statutes which Yahuwah has spoken to them through Moses. Leviticus chapter 10, verse 8 to 11. So all of this was the first old covenant that Israel lived through, and how it was established. This was the culture of the Israelites and what they were born and brought up doing. The first covenant consisted of 1. Commandments that he gave to them, which he wrote on stone. 2. The building of a tabernacle that he was able to dwell amongst them. And 3. A priestly service through the Levites, in which if they sinned unintentionally, there was a way to atone for it. This was the first covenant that our father Yahuwah gave our forefathers. This is the covenant he made with our forefathers in the day that Yahuwah took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt. This is the covenant that they had broke, and Yah prophesied of making a renewed one. Again, it is the same covenant as the first one, but all the Most High did was change certain things, but not the entire Torah. This was the first covenant. It needs to be understood that if you don't understand the first covenant, you cannot understand the covenant that was renewed. And this is the real problem in Christianity. After going over what was actually established in the first covenant, this should make more sense to you. This first covenant is crucial to understand if you are going to understand the renewed covenant our Father made. Now what must happen is, now we have to go over the renewed covenant to see what exactly was made different. Amen.